Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into the invisible legal scaffolding that literally supports our daily lives, and it all starts way back in 1872. We make deals every single day, usually just assuming there's a safety net beneath us if things go wrong. Well, today we're going to decode exactly what that net looks like. Think about it. Have you entered into a legally binding contract today? If you bought a coffee, swiped a card, or even just sent a specific WhatsApp message, you absolutely might have. So here is how we're going to build that deal step by step. 1. The blueprint of contracts. 2. Making a valid offer. 3. The rules of acceptance. And 4. From post to WhatsApp. All right, let's jump right into section 1, the blueprint of contracts. Time to build the foundation. So the absolutely crucial point here is found in section 2H. It says, an agreement enforceable by law is a contract. Think about the weight of that for a second. It means not every single agreement you make is actually a contract. We make casual agreements all day long, but for an agreement to evolve into a contract, it specifically has to be recognized and enforceable by the courts. It's kind of like a math formula. The basic equation requires a promise, plus consideration, which just means something of value being exchanged between parties to get a basic agreement. But to forge a true legally binding contract, you have to add that special, non-negotiable ingredient, legal enforceability. Now, why does that exact formula matter so much? Because social or moral promises generally do not amount to contracts unless that legal intention is there. Say you promise your friend you'll meet them for dinner at 7, and you completely flake, just don't show up. They can't sue you for breach of contract. Why? Because neither of you had the intention to create a formal legal obligation over dinner plans. The really famous Balfour v. Balfour case perfectly cements this concept. The court basically said that domestic arrangements lacking the intention to create legal relations are simply not enforceable contracts. Without that crystal clear legal intent, domestic promises remain just that, promises. The courts are not going to step in. To finish off our blueprint, Section 10 of the Act gives us a strict checklist for a valid contract. You need 2 or more parties, a promisor and a promisee. You need consensus ad idem, which is just a beautiful Latin way of saying a true meeting of the minds. You also need entirely free consent, meaning zero coercion, fraud, or mistake. And finally, the object and the consideration must be totally lawful, with definite, certain terms. Moving on to Section 2, making a valid offer. This is our starting point. Section 2A lays the groundwork here. When one person signifies to another his willingness to do or abstain from doing anything with a view to obtaining assent, he is making a proposal. In plain English, an offer or proposal is the absolute starting point, where the offeror officially asks the offeree for their legally binding yes. But here's a really fascinating contrast. An offer is a final expression of willingness to be bound, like raising your paddle to place a specific bid at an auction. But an invitation to offer? That's merely an invitation to negotiate. So walking past a store window and seeing a beautiful display with a price tag, that is just an invitation for you to walk inside and make an offer. It is not a final legal offer from the store itself. The landmark Harvey v. Facey case clearly drew this line in the sand. The courts established that simply answering a question about your lowest acceptable price does not automatically constitute a binding offer. And this makes sense, right? It ensures merchants aren't legally trapped into a contract just because they answered a basic question or invited negotiation. But wait, what about wide-reaching advertisements? Well, the Carlyle v. Carbolic Smokeball Company case created a massive exception here. It proved that a company absolutely can be bound by a general, unilateral offer made to the general public, as long as they show clear legal intention to actually be bound by it. There is, however, a strict mechanical rule you gotta follow. According to Sections 3 and 4 of the Act, communication of a proposal is only complete when it comes to the knowledge of the person to whom it is made. But simply, an offer is completely meaningless until the other person actually knows it exists. This brings us to a super intriguing case, Lalman Shukla v. Gari Dutt, which highlights this perfectly. It established that knowledge of the offer is absolutely essential for valid acceptance. So if someone puts out a reward for a lost item, and you find it without ever knowing a reward was being offered, you can't claim the money later. You literally cannot accidentally accept a proposal you never knew about. All right, Section 3, the rules of acceptance. Let's see how we actually seal the deal. Section 2B tells us exactly how the magic happens. When the person to whom the proposal is made signifies his assent thereto, the proposal is said to be accepted. Once the offeree agrees, boom, the offer combined with the acceptance instantly transforms into a legally binding promise. Now, this isn't a free-for-all. There is a very strict flow. First, acceptance must be absolute and unqualified. You can't change the terms and say, I accept, that just becomes a counteroffer. Second, your acceptance has to be properly communicated back to the offerer. And third, it must follow the prescribed mode and time. If they say reply by mail by Tuesday, you can't just call them on Wednesday and expect it to be legally binding. Which brings us to a really fun question. Does silence mean yes? Seriously, think about it. If I offer to buy your car and I say, hey, if I don't hear from you by tomorrow, it's a deal. Does your complete silence mean you legally agreed? The answer is a resounding no. The famous Feldhaus v. Bindley case definitively debunked that idea. The general rule is clear. Mere silence does not amount to acceptance. You cannot force someone into a legally binding contract simply because they didn't reply to your message. And finally, Section 4, from post to WhatsApp, the evolution of contracts. It is honestly incredible to see how a law written back in the horse-drawn days of 1872 actually adapts to our lightning-fast digital world. We started with physically mailed letters, transitioned in the mid-20th century to telephonic communication, formally brought in email by the year 2000, and today, we're navigating complex contracts through WhatsApp and entirely digital conduct. This evolution brings us to two very distinct rules. First, the 1872 postal rule. To protect people using the mail from total uncertainty, acceptance is considered complete the moment the letter is dropped into the mailbox. But for instantaneous communication, like a telephone call, the rule shifts. Acceptance is complete only upon receipt, meaning the offerer actually has to hear you say yes. So how does this translate to our modern digital lives? Well, email contracts are fully legally recognized under the Information Technology Act of 2000. The Trimax International case officially validated electronic contracts, proving that digital communication is effective the moment it reaches the recipient server. Today, courts will literally look at the blue ticks on your WhatsApp messages alongside your user conduct to prove the intention and communication of a modern deal. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a bit of a provocative thought. In an increasingly automated digital world full of clicks, swipes, and WhatsApp blue ticks, how many legally binding contracts have you agreed to today? It's pretty fascinating, and maybe a little scary, to realize just how much of your daily digital life is governed by a brilliant set of rules drafted over 150 years ago. Thanks for exploring the anatomy of a deal with me.